All right, hi there, everyone. Welcome to our class, Help for Jumpy and Mouthy Dogs. Our event today is all about these jumping and mouthy behaviors that all of us are seeing in our dogs. And this presentation should give you a better understanding of why dogs do this and what techniques you can use to help your dogs choose not to jump and mouth. So just to kind of start off, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Robyn, and I'm a member of the training team here at the shelter. I've been a member of the training team for about, I think, 8 months now, and I'm really, really glad to be here. I have a bachelor's degree in zoology, and I've been studying animal behavior and training in both wild and domesticated animals for about the past 5 years. And I'm really passionate about training and about public outreach, so I'm really, really glad to be here today. I'm also joined by my supervisor, Donna. Donna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Donna Rabasa. My pronouns are they, she. I am the training services supervisor here at the Santa Fe Animal Shelter. I've actually been in shelter since 2004, which is crazy to think about now, but I've seen my share of jumpy, mouthy dogs, thousands probably at this point. So means that y'all are in good hands today, because between Robyn and I, it's definitely something we get asked a lot, and we're just really excited to share tips and tricks with you on this topic. I will actually be taking a back seat, and I'll mostly be interacting with y'all through the chat, which Robyn can explain about in a minute. Yeah, so I'll get back to you, Robyn.
All right, thanks, Donna. And just one more thing about this slide that you're seeing there. The logos on the bottom of the screen represent all of the different organizations that we're affiliated with as a team. So it's really awesome that, between all of us, we have all of these different groups that we can kind of turn to for continuing education and just any sort of science-based dog training tips and all of that. So that's all there for you to look at if you guys are interested in any of that. All right, so just a little bit of housekeeping before we really get started here. First, we're recording this for training purposes, and since we are a big group today, I ask that you hold any questions until the designated Q&A slides, and that you keep yourselves muted otherwise, and that will just help us get through the whole presentation and make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. If you do have questions kind of throughout the slides and you want to make sure you remember them, you can feel free to put those in the chat, and then Donna will bring them to me at those Q&A slides. So definitely, feel free to use that if you're more comfortable doing that. And then after this presentation, we'll send a follow-up email with different, resources and things that we might mention throughout the presentation. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And now, since we've kind of introduced ourselves and gotten the housekeeping out of the way, Donna and I are going to turn off our videos as well so that you all can focus on the presentation. All right. Okay, so our community at the Santa Fe Animal Shelter is a life-saving community, which means that animals that come to us are given the best chance that they can to get adopted. And we're only able to be that way because of community support. So if any of you volunteer or donate, foster, adopt, even just joining us here at these community connection events, you make this happen. So thank you so much for doing that. And then also a huge thank you to Purina for making community connection events like this possible through their generous financial support. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to start with a little bit of an overview here. These are the topics that we're going to be covering today. So a bit about why dogs jump in mouth, how we can help them learn to self-regulate, and how we can set them up for success through both management and training. All right, so let's really get into the meat of why dogs become jumpy and mouthy. So it's important when you're talking about different behavior challenges that you're seeing in your dogs, that you talk about natural dog behaviors, right? It's really important that we look at that when we're looking at why questions around dogs. Dogs have their own set of natural behaviors that work for them, but they live in an environment that isn't really made to accommodate most of those behaviors, right? They're living in houses. They're living in our houses specifically, and so that is not necessarily, conducive to their natural behaviors like chewing and barking and all of these things that can be really problematic for us. So recognizing that, and that they live in this sort of inconvenient environment for them, is really the first step in making headway in changing our dog's behavior. So let's talk a little bit about where these jumping and mouthing behaviors come from. All right, so we all know that today's dogs and wolves share a common ancestor, so their behaviors are very similar. So in this video, you can see wolves performing a greeting ritual among members of the pack. So notice what you are kind of seeing a lot of here. There's the flashing teeth and the nosing and going right at each other's faces, licking each other's faces, right? All of that passes along information to the other wolves. Here are the things that I ate. These are the places I've been, and I'm really glad to see you again, right? And this might look pretty familiar to a lot of us dog parents out here. And in dogs, we can sometimes see enthusiastic greetings that go straight for the face, like you can see in this video, right? That's very similar to the greeting we just saw between the wolves, with the wiggly body and the ears back in excitement and the tongue out and the teeth everywhere. The only difference, of course, is that we're humans, not dogs or wolves. So to us, this is what greeting looks like, right? With strangers, we keep some distance and sometimes we touch hands, not right now, obviously, because of COVID, but, so we are generally keeping a little bit more distance with people that we know or and love, a quick hug and greeting sometimes. We're not licking each other's faces and we're not biting each other's noses, right? So those types of behaviors from our dogs are generally not wanted. And we also see mouthy behaviors in play with dogs. So you can see these dogs are both having a really great time just rolling around, and their teeth are everywhere. And for them, that's a lot of fun, right? They can do this thing and find it playful because they have a nice layer of fur between their skin and the oncoming teeth, and they also have thicker skin than we do, right? But for us, this type of play is really not that acceptable. We have pretty comparatively hairless skin, and it's really fragile, and they have sharp teeth, right? Especially the puppies with their little needle teeth, right? And their jaws are very, very strong. So all of these things kind of make that sort of play with us inappropriate. And so what about jumping, right? When we're talking about jumping in dogs, oftentimes, we just think of this as such a problematic behavior. But you can see the dogs here; they're doing excited play, and you can see they're just leaping around and bouncing everywhere, and that's very typical expression of excitement, right? You might also see this if your dogs are getting really excited about going outside, right? They might kind of jump and leap into the air in anticipation of that because they're just so excited. So they're jumping when they're excited, when they're playing, if they have to jump over something, right? There's all these different reasons why dogs jump as natural behaviors, and why they try to do those things with us. However, from our human side of things, we're not usually expressing our excitement through jumping and running around crazily, right? So it's hard for us to kind of understand that in our dogs. All right. Does anyone have any questions about these sorts of natural dog behaviors? And we'll go into more of how we manage them and all the other training further on in the presentation.
So Robyn, I'm going to give a couple seconds. This is Donna. I'm going to give a couple seconds to see if anyone wants to type into the chat or unmute to ask a question. And I'll also just throw out there that we have a lot of common misconceptions about jumping and mouthing. And a common, at the risk of opening a can of worms, common misconception of jumping is it's a sign of dominance, and it really just isn't. Um, so, in case that's a question that somebody's a little too afraid to ask, that's a piece of misinformation out there that really doesn't help us with the next section, which is all about, well, how do we deal with jumping and mouthing? So, all of the reasons that dogs jump and mouth are really clearly outlined by Robyn. They're usually just coming from some internal emotional state, and not so much like of a power play between our dogs and ourselves. When we get into that headspace and we can kind of dismiss that myth, it can really help us in deciding how to move forward with, well, how do we change that behavior, which Robyn's going to talk about next.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. That's a really good point. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about these natural dog behaviors?
I haven't seen anything in the chat.
Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and move on to our next section then. So now we're looking at how we do help set our dogs up for success. And that just means, how do we set up their environment so they're not really ever getting the chance to jump or get their mouth on us in the first place. So we talk about this in terms of management and prevention, which is just keeping our dogs from practicing those unwanted behaviors. Now here on this slide, we have the hierarchy of dog needs. And if our dog's needs aren't being met in any one of these lower sections, training, which if you can see in that picture there is up in that red bar up near the top of the pyramid, training is going to be a lot more difficult. So we really want to look at those lower sections first, especially for something like jumping and mouthing, right, which is often coming from a place of not getting their needs met. So, as I mentioned, jumping can be about excitement and energy release. So kind of taking a look at that bottom section, are they getting enough exercise according to what they need? Are they healthy? Are they getting fed enough or maybe, too much? Are they not sleeping enough or are they getting too much sleep, right? All of those things are really worth considering when you're approaching the struggle of jumpy and mouthy behaviors. Getting those needs met is going to be really important. Emotional and social needs are also really important. So, are they feeling satisfied? Do they get to interact with other people or animals if they want to? Do they have dog friends or consistent human playmates, right? Just taking all of those things into account and really trying to set your dog up so they do have the things listed in those bottom 3 sections of the pyramid. Also thinking about, what your dog's day-to-day looks like. Are they maybe bored, right? Are they sleeping a lot? Do they need something to do? Trying out enrichment activities can be a really fun thing for you and your dog to do. Things like sniffy walks where you're letting their nose lead the way on a walk, giving them food puzzles like the snuffle mat that you see pictured on the picture on the right here, and other things just to get their brain engaged and active, right? A lot of the jumping and the mouthing is all about that energy release and releasing their mental energy in the form of enrichment, which is just, problem solving and really getting to interact in ways that are important for dogs, is really going to be critical in draining some of that energy. And we'll send you a document on enrichment for dogs that will have some different examples of what enrichment can look like, and you'll get that in our follow-up email. And it's also really important to remember that one dog's basic needs might look pretty different from another dog's, right? So a dog like this one on the left here that's bred for running is going to need a lot more exercise than, something that's was bred to be a lap dog, right? So thinking about that, both of those dogs need different amounts of exercise, but they do both still need exercise, right? So really just looking at your dog, figuring out what they need, maybe talking to your vet, right? Getting all of this information and making sure that you're on the right track with your dog. All right, so after you're meeting these basic needs, what's the first step to setting your dog up for success? And it's recognizing patterns. So noticing when or where they're most likely to engage in the jumpy and mouthy behaviors. And so think about like, is it right before a meal, right? Do they get really excited and jumping all over the place? Is it during play when they're most likely to put their mouths on you? Or is it, when you walk through the front door after getting back from work, right? Just really looking at when your dog is most likely to do this and why they're doing it, right? And then thinking about any sort of warning signals, right, that a behavior is about to happen. So a lot of times when dogs are, kind of coming at us with the intent to jump, we can kind of see that look in their eye, right? They get that little bit crazy eyed. Their tails might go straight up. They might spin around, right? There's all of these different indicators and precursors that lead to the jumpy and mouthy behaviors. So it's a really good idea to spend some time really focusing in on the patterns as much as possible, maybe even taking notes down just over a few days to see it all in one space, right? That can help you really understand the patterns that you're seeing if you're writing it down every time that it happens. And that can allow you then to get ahead of the problem as much as you can. And that's a crucial first step. All right, so once we've taken all of that into account, why our dogs are doing this, what they're getting from it, how they're being rewarded, what's the next step in this? And it's really setting the environment up so that they can be successful. So here in this picture, you see the dog is kind of behind a little gate while the door is open to keep him inside. That's an example of kind of setting up the environment. So you just don't even have to worry about leaving the door open, right? So in terms of jumping and mouthing, really thinking about, okay, is it every time I come through the front door, that's when they're jumping up on me? Maybe just setting up a blockade kind of in front of the door, right? You've got something like an X pen or a baby gate that you can keep your dog on the other side of, so that when you come in you have a moment to breathe, right, and they don't get a chance to jump on you. Thinking about for dogs that are really mouthy, if they're mouthing you, first thing out of the kennel in the morning, coming to the kennel with a tug toy or a chew toy or something that they really like and can put their mouths on, right? So that they're not putting their mouths on you. So really setting it up for them so that you are kind of not prompting them to engage in these behaviors, and they're not thinking that that's the appropriate thing to do. And part of this, of course, is keeping yourself safe, right? So here we have pictures of things like rubber boots if your dogs are kind of going for your ankles and toes, gloves if your dogs are going for your hands, long sleeve shirts, right? All of those things are going to be really important. And these things are not forever things that you need to be wearing, right? It's just a way to help you be able to stay in situations in order to help kind of facilitate the training that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So it's really to keep you safe and keep you able to continue dealing without getting so frustrated and hurt, right? Because definitely when our dogs are mouthing us and jumping on us, that can be really hard. Other types of keeping yourself safe is just moving behind barriers, right? If your dog is just so excited that nothing is calming them down, you can just move into a different room, like just giving yourself that freedom to move out of the way, keep yourself safe. That's really important when you're dealing with this, so that you don't burn yourself out, right? That it can be really hard to deal with dogs that are jumping and mouthing us all the time. So definitely thinking about that as you are going through this process. All right, does anyone have any questions specifically about these management strategies that we just talked about? All right, Donna, do you have anything in the chat for me?
Yeah. Um, so it looks like David and JL are wondering if there's a downside to giving a dog an alternative like a chew toy to chew. I'm going to ask David to unmute if you can. Do you want to kind of share a little bit more about what you're asking?
Sure, this is really Johnny Lou. Hi, Donna. How are
Oh,
you?
hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. I asked that question because, and it actually stemmed from a dog that was in the behavior unit when I was working there. And the dog would, and it was a big rowdy dog. Maybe you remember Jefferson, but because he was there for a while, that's why I say maybe you remember him, but he would, you'd take him down to the yard and he would just go after you. And I would hand him a glove to get him to stop from chewing on me. But I wasn't sure if that was, I mean, to me, it seemed like a bribe of some sort. Like I wasn't really solving the problem.
Okay, yeah, I hear you on that. And it is funny because like the way when we are reinforcing behavior, so when we are rewarding behavior, you always want to make sure that reward follows the behavior we wanted. Otherwise, it becomes a bribe. So like I'll never show a dog a treat and ask them to sit. That's a bribe. But I'll pay a dog for sitting, right? So I can kind of, I think I can follow like your logic here in terms of like, feeling I might be bribing this dog and I'm also not really accomplishing behavior change. So, I'll start by saying, as far as what's the best method for every dog, the answer is always going to be, it depends. fun enough, but that really is the reality of training and dogs. And then in this kind of a scenario, like everything that Robyn has shared is really prevention strategies. That's what we mean by management. So when we're talking about management, we're really just trying to prevent a couple things: the practice of the behavior. And if the behavior is particularly dangerous, which any kind of mouthing can escalate, right? Then we want to prevent that from escalating. We want to prevent it from becoming a habit. And if we prevent them from practicing the behavior, then we're preventing it from being rewarding to them, right? We have to remember that dogs do what work. Like they only do annoying things because in their minds it works to get their needs met, right? And so mouthing could be all the different reasons that Robyn has described. But so long as they're almost allowed to practice this, then yeah, they can develop this habit and that can start to escalate. So management doesn't really change the behavior, but it can help prevent it from escalating. And then training alongside that can help teach the dogs to do something else. So in the specific scenario of like, this dog, and I actually don't remember this dog, but have met plenty that were similar in behavior from what you described. And, in that case, our priority really is keeping everyone safe, particularly in a shelter, right? Super important that we are preventing mouthing as much as possible because that gets dogs in trouble really quickly. And in shelters, dogs aren't getting their basic needs met. And I'll tell you, having been in shelters across the country, we do a phenomenal job at Santa Fe Animal Shelter, meeting our dogs' needs. But that being said, right, it's no match for a home, right? No match for a home where someone can individually provide really what that dog needs. So this is a really long way of just kind of explaining that in that scenario, I can totally understand why we would recommend that, why you chose to do that, right? Giving them something to redirect to when prevention is really just hard because maybe we're not meeting the dog's needs adequately. Maybe there's a heightened level of stress. There's so many things that make prevention hard in that scenario. And at that point, it's kind of a last ditch, like, I'm going to redirect you elsewhere so you're not mouthing my body parts. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, great. We've also got another question here from Trisha Gunter. So I'm going to read this out. I feel a little guilty setting up so many barricades in my house, but it has helped us. Should I not feel bad about limiting rooms or our dog can access? He has full access all the time to the living room, kitchen, and yard. I have gates to block the bedrooms, but feel guilty about it. Robyn, I'm going to let you take this one.
All right. Yeah, I think, having gates up and blocking them from different rooms is totally fine. And I don't think that's something that you need to feel guilty about, right? Your dog has plenty of space with the living room and the kitchen and the yard, right? And if it's making your setup easier for, the humans in the household to go around and be able to manage things on a day-to-day basis, I think that's totally fine. If it's something that eventually, you want to not have, that's kind of where the training comes in, right? So in the meantime, though, I think having those gates up is a really good way of managing the situation so it's tolerable for everybody, right? And your dog can enjoy being in the spaces that they're allowed to be in, and you can then start working on that training eventually to take those gates down if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's a really thorough answer, Robyn. Thank you. And Trisha, thank you for asking. Honestly, I get this a lot from new dog parents, like the dog is new, or puppy parents. I feel guilty because like I want them to have free reign and that sort of thing. And I think really just emphasizing Robyn's point of like, it's not forever. Management strategies aren't necessarily forever. They can be if they work for you and you're fine with that. But they're usually just kind of like this bridge to getting to where you want to be, which, in your case might be taking down some of those barriers over time. So, yeah. All right, Robyn. Well, in the interest of time, and there aren't any other questions currently in the chat, I'm going to let you keep going.
All right. Okay, so once we have all of those management tools in place, right, we've put up some baby gates and really made it a manageable situation for us. How do we go about teaching our dogs what we do want them to do? The first thing that we start with is teaching them how to regulate and moderate their responses to their emotions. So for some human examples of what that really means, we can get excited, but we can usually hold back from running around the room, jumping and yelling, right? We can be upset, but not so upset that we take it out on the people around us. And we can get really scared and maybe even jump or scream, but we can calm ourselves down afterwards and recover from that fear. So dogs can do all of that too, but we do have to help them learn how to do it and encourage them to do it, right? Much like with human children. So how do we help our dogs learn how to do this? So we incorporate some small breaks into games, or we add rules and reward them for following those rules. So this example is going to be tug with rules. So this is playing a game of tug of war with our dogs, but then incorporating small periods of time where they drop the tug toy, which then gets the game to start again. So I'll go ahead and play this video for you all. And here the trainer is using the word thank you as kind of the, all right, we're stopping, and then take it as the, okay, let's start again. And so this is a good way of teaching our dogs to just take a break, and that gets them rewarded with the start of the game again. So really waiting for that dog to kind of give the sit and look up at the trainer right before giving the tug toy back, and really working on that for the particular dog. And you can see this dog wanted to kind of jump up after the toy that time, but then sat down. And as soon as the dog sat down, trainer returns the tug toy, right? So just doing that over and over through the play can really go a long way in helping our dogs learn that taking a break and calming down a little bit is not that bad. In that time, the dog didn't jump up afterwards, which was great. So that's kind of more what we're looking for. And you can also condition that, drop it cue, the thank you in this video, by saying that word kind of outside of the context of the game, and then pairing that with treats, right? And that just teaches them like treats will come when you hear this word, so it's worth your while to drop that tug toy. So your goal is to always be keeping the tug game relatively calm, right? So that your dog can take that break. So with the dog in this video, right, he was a little bit calm calmer of a dog, so could tug for a little bit longer, right? But if you have a dog that gets really energetic with a game of tug and is, really pulling and really starting to go crazy after just a few seconds, make that tug session just a little bit shorter, right? 1 to 2 seconds to start, and then take a break. So you're looking at where your dog can be successful and then kind of building on that over many sessions. An important thing to remember when you are playing tug, to keep that tug toy on kind of an even plane, right? And be going from side to side, left to right, instead of up and down. So for a shorter dog, you may want to kneel or kind of bend over a bit like you saw in the video, just to keep their neck safe. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is a game called Go Crazy, Be Calm. And in this game, you're actually asking your dog to get excited and then asking them to calm down afterwards. Being able to bring their excitement levels up and then back down again is a really difficult skill, and it's a really important one for any jumpy and mouthy dogs. So here, this video, you'll see an example.
Go crazy. Yeah.
And so in this video, I'm clicking and treating for when the dog sits down, right? And getting them excited with my own energy, and then stopping again, having her sit down, and then going again. And this is a really great game to play. And this dog, she's my dog, and we've practiced this a lot. So I actually have a harder time getting her to go crazy now than I did when I first started this game, in order to get her to be calm. So that's actually kind of the way that this game can progress, right? When they get the idea like, oh, it actually really benefits me to stay calm because I get that treat, then it gets harder and harder for them to kind of go up and raise their energy up, because they think, no, I'd rather just be calm because I'll get that food, right? So when you're starting with this game, really thinking about starting small, right? In this video, I was kind of running around for, maybe 5 seconds at a time, something like that. That might be too long for you to start with. So you might even have to do, just like 1 or 2 seconds of craziness, right? Of being crazy before asking them to calm down. You might start at a lower energy level, right? Not running around, maybe just like making excited sounds, right? That can be enough to set off some dogs. So really starting at the lowest level of excitement that you can, seeing if your dog can handle it when you ask them to be calm. And that be calm might not look like a sit like you saw in this video at first. It might just look like they stop jumping, right? Or they take their mouth off of you, right? It could be any of those things. So we really want to make sure that, again, we're setting our dogs up to be successful, and we're asking for just very small amounts of craziness and then small amounts of calm, in order that they can do it and succeed and not get frustrated. So definitely, this is something that I think really, really helps them learn how to increase their excitement levels, but also then bring them back down again and choose to control the actions that they're performing around that emotion of excitement. So it's really important to be aware of just how worked up your dog is, right? If they're too far past a certain level of excitement, it's going to be much harder for them to come back down from that. So in this infographic, you can see some of the sort of telltale behaviors that mean our dogs are what we call over threshold, which just means that they're no longer in their learning brain. They're too excited. And you can see this heading of hyperarousal, right? That's what we call it when our dogs are just really, really excited. So it's a really good idea to focus on managing their environment so that your dog is staying under their excitement threshold, even during those training games that we were just talking about, right? We don't want them to get to the point where they're getting destructive and they're not able to focus on you, right? We want to keep it calm enough that they can actually learn. All right. Are there any questions about these emotional regulation games and what that looks like?
Yeah. So I'm going to give folks a chance to chime in. I do have one question sent privately here, so I'm happy to share that to start. So it sounds like one of 4 dogs in the home is a little mouthy. Every time someone comes to the house or we see someone at the park, the dog grabs at their hands. If they're wearing gloves, she still grabs those. Must be a fun game for your puppy, for your dog. People always say, "Ouch, she bit me," but it's just a mouthy nip. We usually have a toy or stuffed animal at the front door when people come over, and she carries that in her mouth, so no mouthy behavior. But how do I stop it at places like the dog park or in public when I don't have a toy to put in her mouth? FYI, she's really friendly. She just likes saying hi. Help, Robyn, you want to help out with that?
Yeah, so this is something that is definitely a lot harder to manage, right? Because you're looking at a bunch of other people and a bunch of other dogs, right? And it's hard to kind of determine who's going to be there and what their reactions are going to be, right? So something that is worth trying, and it kind of goes along with this sort of emotional regulation, and it's taking breaks, right? So even when you're at the dog park, sometimes just bringing your dog away for a little bit, and keeping them calm for just a few minutes, maybe giving some treats, whatever it looks like for you, and then kind of re-engaging in the play, just so that they're not getting too hyped up. It's also, if the dog park seems to be a place where your dog is getting really, really excited, right? Then that could mean that there's just a little bit of overstimulation happening, right? And that is another way of being over threshold, right? They're maybe too far past that phase where they can actually listen to you, and come away if you call them, and all of those things. So thinking about maybe going at times a day when there are fewer people there, so they're a little bit less excited, maybe meeting people that so you can kind of warn them ahead of time that she has these sort of more mouthy behaviors. And definitely, as far as sort of talking to the people go, being your dog's advocate, right? If they're trying to say like no, and shake her off or whatever that looks like, as much as you can and feel comfortable doing, just saying like, oh well, I'll call her away, it'll be all right, and kind of as much as possible trying to like de-escalate that, so that you're not having people accidentally rewarding her for that behavior, right? Asking them not to engage her if she's nipping them, things like that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot less that you can do to manage other people, but in those situations, yeah, trying to find kind of a happy medium, where maybe if you're seeing that there's 6 people and their dogs in the park, that's just too many, and maybe waiting until a couple of them leave or something like that, to just set it up to be a less exciting sort of environment if you can. And then working on these emotional regulation games sort of outside of the dog park, right? So that then, if you need to, you can say something like, be calm, and she knows what that means and she will calm down, right? So definitely kind of coming at it from both of those directions. Donna, did you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think those are all great suggestions. In the case of a dog that it sounds like she's particularly just excited about greeting people, that's just how she likes to say hi. I do love that in home we're using a toy to manage the behavior. I think that's a really cute, actually, way of doing that. And clearly it's working, so it's helping reinforce, give her something that she needs in the moment. Teaching your dog polite greetings, and there's a lot of ways of going about that, but working on that as a training activity, and then trying that out in real life once you feel confident in your dog's ability to do that. Different ways to do that are teaching your dog to sit, and practicing that they hold a sit, for petting and people approaching and that sort of thing. I love nose targeting for this, and we have actually a few Training Tip Tuesday videos on getting started with nose targeting. Nose targeting is such an easy way to teach a dog a polite greeting. It's really just where your dog learns to touch their nose to an object, and we usually teach that by showing our dogs touch your nose to a hand, right? So it changes that picture of like, I'm gonna grab at your hand, and instead I nose target. Oh my gosh, that's so much more gentler to people. It's also a pretty cute trick. And so you could use that as something that you teach your dog first, the nose target, and then you teach them that we nose target when we meet new people. And that can be a lot nicer for strangers than the mouthing. So lots of different options there. I'm going to answer the next question that came in. I heard that when a dog mounts another dog, it's a sign of their hormones kicking in. Is that true? Going to give you the trainer answer is it honestly depends, but that's not the case across the board. Mounting happens for a variety of reasons. Certainly can be hormones, particularly in intact dogs, but a lot of times it's really just stemming from over arousal, meaning I'm excited, and sometimes dogs are excited in a positive or negative way. Like think about when you're nervous at a party and you don't know what to do, and like, where do I put my hands? And I'm gonna look at the floor and kick at the dust and maybe hang out on the wall. Like that can manifest in dogs as mounting when they're uncomfortable, right? But it can also be, I'm just like super excited and I don't know what to do with myself. And this is just how it's expressed. And the reason some dogs do it and some dogs don't in those contexts has a lot more to do with like their own personal genetic makeup, but also what behaviors did they learn as they were learning emotional regulation, which Robyn just covered. So yeah, it can mean a couple different things. And we've got another question here before we move on. So my 8-month-old Yorkie seems almost desperate to bite our hand sometime, and a biter won't change his mind. If I put hands in pocket or sit on them, he will look for the hands. So I think it sounds like, as far as the Yorkie goes, we've just got, a fixation on wanting to mouth or potentially bite at hands. Robyn, do you want to just kind of give a quick answer to that?
Sure. So a lot of the times, when you're seeing that sort of behavior, it could be that, the hands have, been very interesting and involved, right? We're humans, we use our hands for a lot of things. Maybe even at first, kind of playing with him with our hands, right? And the hands have become these good things that now he just wants to play with, right? So kind of looking at that from that perspective, where it seems like he, might have been potentially even, rewarded in the past or something like that for playing with the hands. And so as much as possible, rewarding him for playing with other things. So even if you have like another toy and can bring out the toy, and then also, give him food or something that he really likes for playing with the toy instead of going for your hand. Really working on teaching, other types of attention-seeking behaviors, right? Which could be another reason why he's going for the hands, right? If he learns that, the hands will push him away, or you'll maybe bring out something else for him to do if he goes for them. So keeping your hands out of reach, especially for the little dogs, kind of keeping them behind your back and away. And maybe being able to then engage in a different sort of a way, and then reward for those alternative behaviors, right? That he can't bite you and play with the tug toy at the same time. So really making that a strong behavior, or sitting for attention, right? Something like that instead.
All right, and we've got another question. I'll take this before we move on, and then we can circle back to questions at the end here. So does continued use of management approaches, does continued use of that end up lowering a dog's hyperarousal threshold over time, so you don't have to use them as much, or do you have to keep using them as long as you have the dog? In other words, Will your dog get calmer over time with the use of management approaches? It's a really good question. And with regards to mouthing and jumping, most of the time, because if we think of this as this is generally, if we're managing it, it's a behavior we don't like, right? And I say that because there are some people who have jumpy, mouthy dogs and they're fine with that. So it's something that we're managing because in at least particular context, we don't appreciate it. And so we need to prevent it, right? Because we don't want it to escalate. And without management, that kind of thing almost generally is going to escalate. It's going to get more annoying. It's going to happen in more contexts. And then with mouthing, that can get dangerous, right? Even if it's coming from a friendly place. But again, that management and training, they go hand in hand, particularly for behaviors we want to change. So you would want to teach your dog what to do instead, which is why in our answers to these really wonderful questions, we've included options for, well, show your dog what you want them to do instead, right? Because you want to replace that annoying behavior, so to speak, right? And give them a healthier outlet, or an outlet that we approve of more, that they can engage in instead. All right, Robyn, I will let you continue. And then if y'all have more questions, please feel free to continue to type those into the chat. We will certainly circle back to them.
All right, thanks, Donna. Okay, so just like what Donna was just talking about, right? We discussed management and emotional regulation, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the training, which is teaching them what we want them to do instead of jumping on us and mouthing us. So the first and most important thing to understand in this training is the concept of what is rewarding to our dogs. So hot dogs are really obvious. Most dogs really love food and hot dogs are delicious to them. But think about what else might be rewarding for your dog. If they jump up on you and you shout no and push them down, that might be rewarding to them if they want attention or if they want to play with you, right? You just started the game with that. So kind of thinking about it from your dog's perspective, like this dog here on the right, they're jumping up on their person and their person's petting them, which is rewarding to the dog, right? So really paying attention to what they might be getting out of the jumping and the mouthing that they're doing and how your reaction might be interpreted by them, right? And then teaching alternative behaviors, right? Teaching our dogs to do something else instead of jumping and mouthing and reward that. So it's not just, saying no and hoping that your dog makes a different choice. It's really encouraging them and showing them what the right choice is. So here are some examples of different alternative behaviors. For mouthiness, carrying a toy can be a really good one. Someone mentioned that they had taught their dog to do that, which is great. This can be things like tug ropes or other big toys that they can really, sink their teeth into and get that satisfaction out of grabbing. So teaching them to just carry the toy around can be a really good alternative there. Teaching our dogs to sit quietly, right? To sit down to greet us, to lie down or settle on a mat, like you can see the dog is doing in this picture, right? And then teaching them to have just 4 feet on the floor, right? And that might be where you have to start with any of these sorts of jumping and mouthing behaviors, right? If your dog is very used to doing that, the easiest thing to reward is just having 4 feet on the floor, because when they're doing that, they can't be jumping on you. So the common thread to all of these behaviors, right, is really just that your dog can't be engaging in that jumpy and mouthy behavior while they're doing these behaviors. So how do we teach them these? We use clicker training, right? Or marker training. And what that just means is you teach your dog that the click means that food is coming. And then you use the clicker to mark the moment that your dog does the right thing. So in that video of the Go Crazy, Be Calm, I was clicking when the dog was calm, right? And then following that up with a treat. And so we are using treats in this type of training, but just like Donna mentioned before, it's not bribery, it's really waiting for them to show us the behavior, to offer the behavior that we're wanting to see, and then rewarding them for that with the click and the treat. And like I mentioned in that slide on rewards, paying attention to really what is rewarding to your dog. Maybe you think they really love milk bones or their kibble or something like that, but how much better might a hot dog, a piece of hot dog be, or things like that. So really thinking about what is really rewarding to your dog, what they're going to be able and want to work for, and what will motivate them. And really working in small approximations, right? So starting with that 4 feet on the floor before asking them to sit down, right? And really looking at how you can sort of build up these behaviors into more and more difficult things. And so here we have a video of how to teach settle on a mat. And this is a really, really useful alternative behavior for something like jumping or greeting people when they come to your house, right? If your dog is lying down on the mat, they're not going to be jumping, they're not going to be mouthing.
Hi y'all, I'm trainer Donna, and today I want to let you in on one of the top 5 skills every dog should know. Hey, come on in. Hope, come here. Why is settle on a mat so important? It's incompatible with a lot of the common behavior problems that dog parents complain about, like jumping on guests, rushing through the door, counter surfing, and getting underfoot. Settle on a mat is the ability to lay quietly in a designated spot when asked, and for long durations if necessary. Here's how to get started teaching settle on a mat. Find a mat that's comfortable for your dog and put it in front of you. Then you're going to take a tasty treat and lure them onto the mat. Click for any kind of contact with the mat, and if your dog parks it partially on the mat, you can click and treat that a couple of times before tossing a treat away to reset. And then when my dog makes contact with the mat again, I'm going to click and treat on the mat, and then I'll toss a treat away to reset. So I can use that treat to lure her further onto the mat, and then toss a treat to reset. We'll just keep doing that. Good girl. So you see I clicked as soon as she got all 4 on the mat, and if she stays a little bit longer, she just keeps getting click treats till it's time to reset with a treat toss away. So teaching your dog that it's rewarding to settle onto a mat, lay here calmly and quietly, is really useful for those times when you have people coming over and you want to put your dog in a safe spot until everybody's inside, and that prevents her from jumping on people or rushing out the door. Settle on a mat is also really helpful when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking so they're not underfoot. It's also helpful if you have a meeting and you need your dog to quietly sit there and not distract you. I'm Trainer Donna, and this is Hope, and we hope you enjoyed this Training Tip Tuesday video. Drop us a comment, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this one. And we'd like to give a huge shout out to Subaru of Santa Fe for sponsoring these Training Tip Tuesday videos and for being a huge supporter of the Santa Fe Animal Shelter.
All right, so that's kind of an idea of how to work on one of these behaviors, right? And you could see the click was followed by a treat every time. And by the last time that Donna was getting Hope onto the mat, they were just pointing and were able to just do that without any food in their hands. And so that is what we're looking for, right? To fade down that food and be able to eventually just point, have your dog go there, and then you can click and treat. So that's sort of that concept of the small approximations, right? Starting at 1 foot on and then increasing from there. And it's really also important to, remember that even while you're training these alternative behaviors, you need to have those management strategies in place to keep your dogs from practicing the jumping and mouthing, right? Because the more they practice it, the more they're getting rewarded for it. And then this training becomes a little bit less effective, right? Because now they're still getting rewarded for jumping. So it's really important to use both of these strategies in tandem, right? The management and the training. All right, so next steps, right? Reaching out to our behavior help desk for assistance with your dog's behavior challenges, right? If you are needing help with figuring out the best management strategies for your situation, things like that, maybe that might be something we can help you with. So reaching out to us at training@sfhumanesociety.org or the number there on the screen. And we also have, our online training classes where we teach the clicker training and we work on some of these alternative behaviors like the settle on a mat, like the nose target that Donna mentioned earlier as a great way of teaching those polite greetings. But yeah, definitely, reaching out to us if you have any questions at all about that. And then seeking out a qualified trainer to help you, right? One who uses reward-based training and really focuses on both the management strategies and the training of alternative behaviors like we just described, right? And thinking about when you are looking for a trainer, there's all kinds of different trainers out there. So really looking and asking these questions, right? What's going to happen if my dog gets it right? Do they get a treat? What's going to happen if my dog gets it wrong, right? And really paying attention to that and really seeking out a reward-based trainer who kind of uses the clicker or uses the food to reward your dogs. All right, does anyone have questions about these different behaviors that you can train your dog, how to do that, or clicker training at all?
Just gonna give it a second here. Alrighty, yeah, you're welcome, Pat. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna give it a few more seconds here. We're coming right up on time. And I'll just mention, I'm listening to everything that Robyn shared. And I know it can seem like, well, I just want my dog to stop jumping. But these strategies work together really, really well. I definitely have a dog that other people taught to jump when they greet her because she was a cute puppy and they were like, I don't care. And I was like, but I do. And so that was challenging. But when we have guests come over, she has a really nice settle behavior and she's actually settling on her bed right now. But if we have guests come over, I do like to use just a low baby gate that I can easily put up and take down, just to give guests a chance to walk in the door and to give my dog a second to get some of her wiggles out before she greets them. So that pause in between can be really helpful. And again, it's just that the two things going hand in hand, management and training. So. Yeah, and Linda, I totally understand adolescence can be really challenging, 15-month-old, that may feel a little overwhelming at times. Definitely reach out to our help desk. We can certainly help you get started and point you in the right direction with more personalized tips for your situation. And with that, Robyn will send out an email later today or tomorrow with a recap of some of the next step resources that we mentioned. And so Robyn, it looks like we don't have any other questions. I'll go ahead and let you close.
All right. Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for coming to this talk and to thank Purina again for making this community connection event possible. And I really, we appreciate your support of the shelter. And if you learned even one thing from this presentation that you found useful, please consider donating so that we can continue to provide these services free of charge to the community. We really appreciate your time here, and I hope that you got a lot of really good information. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any more questions. And thank you all so much for supporting the Santa Fe Animal Shelter.